Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Matt Chat. This is David Mirikitani. Today I'm very, very happy to be joined by the Associate Head Coach from Penn State University, Cody Sanderson. Coach, thanks so much for carving some time out for us today.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there listening. Really excited to have you on. Got a chance to talk to you in Vegas and so many subjects to get into. So I kind of want to start, not at the very beginning, but in your collegiate career. Obviously, you had a really good career at Iowa State. When you look back on that, tell me how you think that helped prepare you for your coaching career, both at Utah Valley and at Penn State.
Well, when I was at Iowa State, I had the great fortune to work with Bobby Douglas. To this day, still one of the greatest wrestling technicians I've ever been around. He was brilliant. I felt like when we were learning from him, we were learning from somebody that was ahead of the game. Also, as well, I had Tom Ortiz and Chris Bono there as coaches most of the time. And those guys were just very helpful for me as well as my brothers in helping us develop into college wrestlers. And while I was there, obviously learning the art of coaching, growing up in Utah, we didn't really get an opportunity to see a lot of college matches. And so when I got to Iowa State, it was really my first real experience with college wrestling and what it was supposed to be like. So those guys were there to help us through that. My dad was our high school coach. He prepared us to be there. But my first experience with college wrestling was with those guys.
You mentioned a phrase that really stuck out to me. You said the art of coaching. And I grew up as a coach's son as well. When you say that phrase, the art of coaching, what does that mean to you?
Well, coaching is something that takes, I think, just like any other discipline, it takes years of learning and studying to really start to learn it. We very lucky myself. When I say we, I'm always talking about my brothers as well.
Sure.
Kel, our brother Cole, and then my youngest brother Kyler, because wrestling for us was a family. It's what we did together. And my dad was our coach. And so we grew up watching coaching. My dad was a very successful high school coach in Utah. And so we were able to learn, it's not wrestling technique necessarily, but it's the coaching. It's how to run a program. It's how to work with athletes. It's how to work with boosters and families and parents and young wrestlers. And so we were exposed to that at an early age. And then when we were able to move on to Iowa State, I was able to then go ahead and start learning from some of the best coaches in the world.
Yeah, and you mentioned Coach Douglas, and I'm friends with Coach, and everybody, I've never had the blessing to be coached by him, but everybody I've talked to has mentioned what a genius he is when it comes to technique and things like that. So, is the lessons you learn from him, are those still things you guys draw upon today?
When we start talking about some of the technique that we focus on with our guys, it's stuff that a lot of the stuff we learned from him. And when I was trying to decide where I wanted to go to school, I was the oldest of the brothers. I wanted to find a place where all of us could go and reach our goals. And, when I met with Coach Douglas and I got to know him, I was able to watch his coach and his athletes. I knew that it was a place that we could learn the technical aspect of the sport. And even, I think with my brother Kel, I think that Bobby Douglas was the coach that was able to develop him technically more than any other coach we could have found. And so we were really lucky and blessed to have made that choice.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing to say about Coach Douglas, considering the success your family has had as a whole. One of the things when I was, doing the research for us getting a chance to talk was, and I got to be honest, I almost forgot about this with the success you guys have had at Penn State, that you literally started that program at Utah Valley. And I think very few coaches have literally started a program from scratch like that. So what were the challenges that you had there in terms of just literally getting something off the ground, probably having to buy mats, buy singlets, put a schedule together? What kind of challenges and lessons did you learn from that process?
Well, those challenges you mentioned, it was that and even more. Maybe rephrase it. I wasn't necessarily the one that started the program, but I was the first coach for the program. There was a community of people there in Utah. There was a void in the wrestling community and they needed a college program, they were able to come together and convince the athletic director there to add wrestling at the time. They were looking for a men's sport to add because they were jumping from a junior college to the NCAA Division I athletics. So by requirements, they needed another men's sport. Fortunately, they chose Utah and then or chose wrestling. And then because I was from Utah, I think they felt like it was a good fit for me to be there. As far as challenges, I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. I look back and I kind of laughed at myself. And I remember sitting, I had this little triangle of an office with an old computer that sounded like a lawnmower. It was so old and loud.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I just kind of sat there once in a while, just like, all right, I know I'm supposed to be doing something, but I'm not quite sure. And so I just kind of wander around from coach to coach and ask them questions from the other sports. Spent some time in the athletic director's office, and just kind of started putting it together. We didn't have a wrestling room. Fortunately enough, there were some companies that came through to help us get a wrestling mat. Resby came through, A6 and Flip Keen. Those guys were able to help us get some equipment to get going. But we really didn't have anything. I remember on the phone at times calling coaches and just kind of begging them to wrestle so that we could put a schedule together. It wasn't easy at the time, but just those sorts of things is a completely different aspect of coaching, than we have now. And so I'm very grateful that I was able to come through, that side of it. And because, some of the challenges we have there, we don't have here at Penn State, but I'm aware of them and I know what programs are going through. And I think also it helped me learn what kind of work it takes. My dad told me, if you're going to be a wrestling coach, you got to be ready to put in 12 or 16-hour days to get this done, and he was right.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you do have to put in those, like you said, 12, 14, 16-hour days. But when you get to put that time towards getting the best recruits, coaching the best guys, taking kids from good to great or great to phenomenal, generally you get better results than, like you said, getting on the phone and begging people to let you come to their open tournament or, trying to figure out the best prices for headgears and singlets and things like that. So I would guess that the 14 to 16-hour days you're putting in now are probably doing, more of the things that you enjoy doing and more of the things you end up seeing at the end result on the mat. So you were obviously the associate head coach at Iowa State, and tell me a little bit about that because you're basically in the same role now. So kind of tell me how that transitioned from what you learned there to what you're doing now here at Penn State.
Well, it was, it's really the same thing. And I was at Utah Valley. Cal gave me a call. I knew that it was kind of coming. He said, I'm going to be the head coach here, and I don't want to do this without you. And he said, are you willing? And we talked about it. And I said, you know what, I'd love to come to Iowa State and get back to where I graduated. And part of that, he asked me to be the associate head coach, which, for me, it's pretty much, I'm an assistant coach, but it means that I have more administrative responsibilities, budget responsibilities, and those types of things. What I did there with our coaching staff and Casey Cunningham, who was with us there at Iowa State for 1 year, it's really kind of the same role that we have now. We work together as a group. I think maybe our roles have evolved through time a little bit, but really that same structure that we were able to put together there is what's carried us through.
It seems like you and Cale have just, a super cool relationship. When my dad and I were coaching at Merrimack and, the Nationals were in St. Louis, you guys, a couple of years came in and worked out at our place, like that day or two before Nationals. And, when I was coaching with my dad, it was kind of that unspoken thing. You could kind of look across the room and just look at the guy and know what the other one wants to do. Is that kind of what it's like with you guys working together like that, where, the left hand kind of knows what the right hand's going to do?
Yeah, but that's what we've always done as well. We grew up working out together. We grew up competing together in high school and then at Iowa State and then coaching together. So it was really, people ask me what it's like to coach with my brother, and I don't really know necessarily what it's like not to be associated with him in wrestling because, that's what we do. I know him as well as anybody. He knows me as well as anybody. There's a level of trust there that I just don't think that you can't match that any other way than, maybe father, son, or siblings. We're just lucky to do what we love to do and also have a great supporting staff around us.
How far apart are you guys in age, you and Cale?
Just over 2 years. So he was 2 years behind me in school, and then our brother Cole was right between us in age. So when we were on the team at Iowa State, we were all in the starting lineup for 2 years. So I was a senior when Cale was a sophomore.
Okay. So I kind of think I have a little bit of an idea of the dynamic between you and Cale. And I listened to Cale talk about, he's very, very complimentary, obviously, of you and Casey Cunningham and Varner. So what is it like to work with Casey and with Varner, especially because, you guys coach Jake as well? What is that dynamic like?
Well, we've been working with Casey on the staff for, I think it's 8 or 9 seasons now. And, before we were working with a coach named Tim Hartung out of Minnesota. He was an excellent coach as well. But he approached us and said that he was ready to move on and move out of the college coaching. And he gave us a lot of time to kind of figure out who we thought would be the best coach to bring into our program. And we looked around, and both Cale and I kept thinking that Casey Cunningham was a guy that would be great for our program. I really didn't know him. I'd watched him coach. I saw his results. I saw his athletes. I saw how they interacted. I watched how they competed. And, Cale had a little bit of more personal experience with him, and we couldn't have made a better choice. I mean, he was an incredible coach. He's one of the best coaches I've ever been around. He's somebody that we completely trust. He works great with us, as brothers. Maybe once in a while, Cale and I, we're going to fight a little bit like brothers on occasion. That's
for sure, right?
That's the way it is. He just moves right in when he needs to move in, or he can say, all right, guys, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. And, he is the perfect complement to what we were doing at the time. Now we've had Jake Varner here on staff for 1 year. We all had the opportunity to coach him in college as well as internationally. And, he's kind of I would say, a younger brother to all of us. We were all part of his wedding. And he is the guy that had the same values that we have. He values that hard work. He came to our program. He knows what we want. He knows what we're looking for. And the guy was an incredible athlete, couple-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist. When he talks, guys listen.
Yeah, I mean, he's done. I mean, you have multiple guys on that staff and, all around you guys that have done what anybody who ever started wrestling wants to do. So, yeah, I think that gives, your program and everybody in it a ton of credibility. So I was at a clinic one time, and I heard Cale say that he wasn't very good at teaching technique, that he was very, he didn't say he was very good, but obviously he was very good at doing it. Do you feel like he was just kind of, being, shy or quiet about that, or did he have struggle teaching for a while, and how has he learned to overcome those woes, if there were any there?
Well, I don't know that I've actually heard him say that before, so I know exactly what you meant, and I know that at times I think he thought that he didn't teach that well, but we're talking, this is several years ago, but I don't think that he wasn't a good teacher, because he was always a great teacher. I think maybe the distance between the comfort he felt as a competitor and the comfort he felt as doing a clinic for people were much different. So I think that's probably why I got that impression. But he was always a great teacher. But he's right now, he's far beyond where he was then when he was doing clinics as a competitor. I've noticed that when people do technique, let's just say our guys on our team, I watch our guys, they compete. I know what they do, step by step by step when they compete, and then I watch them teach. So there's always this gap between what guys do and what they think they do. And it seems like the younger they are, the further those are apart. So I think that with Cale, at the time, he thought, this is what I think I'm doing. But when he's competing, you're competing faster than reaction. If you're reacting to someone, you're getting beat. And to break that down and teach it, that's a challenge. And it's a skill that can take a lot of time. But it's something that he's really good at now. Some of the technique we were going through, we'll work out a little bit earlier last week, talking about moving guys, getting position, controlling the tie-ups, just stuff that, it's world class. It's as good as you're going to get. You're not going to see anything better anywhere.
Oh, I believe that. And your results obviously, validate that. So one of the things you said there was that, the gap between being able to do it and being able to teach it is actually bigger from your perspective when you're younger and actually probably better at doing it than, when you're older and maybe retired, but, maybe somehow your ability to learn to process it for other people is better. So I guess I want to make sure I kind of understand that as an example. So you're saying like maybe a guy like Zane Rutherford, who's got an amazing top riding series, bow and arrow and all that, like, are you saying that maybe theoretically 5-10 years from now, he might actually be better at teaching that than he is right now while he's in his college wrestling prime?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, without question. I think that sometimes, when you're currently doing and competing, that adds to it, but that wisdom that comes with being a step beyond your competitive age and learning and finding a way to apply your technique to the different types of wrestlers and the scenarios or the different types of bodies, you just learn more and you learn to feel your way through technique. It's not all about step 1 to step 2 to step 3. Wrestling isn't that mechanical. No, if it's that mechanical, you're probably getting beat. So as a coach, you learn to be less mechanical with it, and you learn to have variety and figure out how to take different individuals, teach them pretty much the same technique, but customize it to that person.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting because, I don't know if people know this, but I always have a list of questions I want to ask you guys and make sure I hit the things I think people want to know, and that you kind of led me to where I want to go next, which is my observation of watching Penn State and your international guys, but, I think a lot of people focus on the college season and the guys that are in your program right now, that they wrestle through the scrambles to completion and to success more often than a lot of the other teams. And so, like, my question that I had written down was, what are you teaching your guys to make this happen? And I'd really like to understand what you're doing that in the context of your statement that wrestling is not mechanical.
All right. Well, that's kind of a big topic to tackle. I would say that, it's more than just the technique. There's the technique. You always have to wrestle every second. You wrestle beyond where you think you need to be. It doesn't matter if a referee puts 2 up or doesn't put 2 up. It doesn't change what you're doing, right? We can't stop and start a wrestling match like that. You're not going to be the best. So I don't think it's probably much different than other coaches do, is, encouraging people to continue to wrestle through positions, all the way on the top, from top to turns. All the best guys do it. I think maybe there's some other aspects that go into it. The training, if you're trained properly, you have the right energy going into a match, you have the right strength going into the match, you have the right confidence going into a match. Well, you're going to finish those scrambles and you're going to finish on top. So there's the technique part of it, but then there's everything else as a coach. You have to make sure the guy is equipped when he steps out on the mat.
Yeah, it makes sense. You guys are obviously doing things that haven't happened for a long time, like in terms of dominance. We really haven't seen this, at a consistent level, 6 out of the last 7 years, since Iowa. And, that style of wrestling at Iowa was completely different than your guys' style. So I guess that leads me into, I hear a lot of your guys, they talk a lot about play wrestling and sparring. So I think we all have different ideas of what those terms mean. What do those terms mean to you and your coaching staff?
Well, it's just a learning situation, I think, is what we're looking for with that. When you look at learning studies for kids in school, elementary school, whether it's sports or math or whatever it is, there's an element to play that helps people learn. It's just the way we are as people, and so we try to incorporate that into what we do. But it's going to be different for every person. You might have somebody like, I'm trying to think of guys like a Nico Megaludis. He's a repetition guy. He likes a lot of repetition over and over and over again. But we might have a guy like Jason Nolf, who's kind of more on the other end, who still gets a repetition, but he likes to play with it more, and it's not quite as rigid. And so for those guys, it's a little bit different. The idea is to get them to find a way within their own style to learn, test, and play, experiment with what they're doing so that they're always getting better. Now, there's a place where you got to go in and you got to get your reps, you got to get your single legs, you got to get your double legs, whatever it is.
Sure.
want to continue to add in and test so that you don't get stale. Same thing over and over again gets to be a little bit boring. So I think maybe it's just us as a staff, we're willing to let guys figure some things out on their own.
Yeah. So I guess I'm almost visualizing, and, so tell me if I have like a correct visual or if I'm completely nuts on this, but like you guys are working on position X, like maybe it's, passing a foot over or a head in a scramble or whatever the case may be. And to use your two examples, Nico's going to get in that position and drill it 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 times. And Nolf's going to get in that position and just kind of flow in there and, just, I don't want to say goof around, but just kind of feel it and maybe not do it the same way twice. And that's their different ways that they learn. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it, is that every guy is going to learn different, and we as a coach need to create those situation environment for them to learn and get better. I think that sometimes when guys get to us, it's a little bit hard for them to know what we mean, but it's really, it's not, it's not meant to be too complicated. It's just another tool. We do drill matches and we do hard matches and we drill 10 shots and we do all the things that everyone else has done growing up. It's another aspect of wrestling. And if there's something we're missing, we try to make sure that we incorporate it and get the guys doing it.
Yeah, but I think that's something big, because I think especially high school coaches, and I think especially Little League coaches, obviously your dad was, a great coach at that high school level. They probably don't have the same freedom to, okay, David, you can kind of learn it this way, and Cody, you can learn it this way, and Nico, you can learn it this way. They have to create a lot more similar structure for, everyone involved. So what are some of the skills or situations or techniques that, if you were giving advice to some of the younger wrestlers out there in terms of sparring and play wrestling, what are some suggestions, maybe a situation or two, or maybe even just a mentality or a way to look at things that those kids could start using to make themselves better?
Well, the number of combinations you can come up with wrestling is limitless. For every body and person and style and weight class, there's going to be differences. So kind of hard to say this is what you should work on. But I think it's, we would just encourage that you're just willing to learn and willing to make mistakes. Here, Coach Kell said all the time when he's coaching the guys, be willing to make mistakes, or be willing to learn from other people's mistakes too. Watch them, see what they're doing. And, you talked a little bit about youth wrestling, and I don't know, actually. I mean, I haven't taught or I haven't coached youth wrestling team or club. I can teach the technique at camps. I can, situations, this is where you need to do, or this is what you need to do, this is where you need to get better. But, coaching the youth level might be a whole lot different.
Yeah, I think it obviously is, because you're starting with different building blocks. But so, the main takeaway is that, guys should sort of put themselves in positions that they're uncomfortable in, and then just kind of learn their way out of it, and just, keep playing with it and having fun with it until they figure out ways. Is that?
Yeah, if you're afraid of a position, you sure as heck better get in that position as much as you can in practice, or it's going to cost you in a match. Okay. Yeah, there's no way around that.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe practice where you're scared, right?
That's one way to look at it.
Your kids talk over and over about the word fun, and Andy Hamilton and I do a podcast where we, during the season where we discuss the rankings and, the results and, kind of what you'd expect we would talk about. And he asked an interesting question to me one time. He said, do you think Penn State's winning because they're having fun, or are they having fun because they're winning? I know they're certainly having fun because they're winning, but when you hear these guys say they're having fun, what is your interpretation of fun and how they're saying that?
Well, it's a little bit different for every guy. One guy's idea of having fun is definitely going to be different than someone else's. But I think it's something that's just a message we get out there. If you're going to be good, you got to love what you're doing. You got to enjoy it. You got to enjoy the hard work. You have to enjoy the learning. There's got to be passion there. When you walk into the restroom, you need to be excited to be there. And if that's not what you're doing, then something's off. Maybe you don't like wrestling, you never liked it. Maybe there's something else going on, but that's where we try to help as coaches. Something, if they're not enjoying themselves in a room, if they're not enjoying themselves when they're competing, they're not going to get the most out of themselves. It's going to be a lot harder for them to reach their goals. So we try to figure out what that would be and help each person individually.
So
make a range. Every guy's different. We have a whole cast of characters on this team, and every single one of them is different.
Yeah. So, if person X comes in and you can tell they're down, and you don't know if it's because, they had a fight with their girlfriend, if they had a hard time cutting weight, if, somebody's sick back home, if, they're struggling with the class, are you guys literally just like pulling that guy aside and saying, look, what's going on? What can we do to help? And really focusing on that mental side of it on a regular basis?
Yeah, we have to. And I think as a coaching staff, we all do that a little bit differently as well. What I might see in someone or what Cunningham might see in someone, they could be different. It might be something that I'm better helping someone with. Another coach might be better helping someone with. So we just work together, try to help the guys out. Or just go in there. A lot of it's caring about the guys. If you care about them, you're going to want to help them. And you're willing to take the time to figure out what it is that they might need.
Yeah, and you hear your guys say that a lot, that your staff does care about them. And I think, coaching, recruiting is kind of a rough game, and everybody will say they're going to care about, somebody's son or daughter, depending on if it's a boy or girl wrestling, but literally showing that and, the proof is in the pudding, and how you treat those people is completely different. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, it seems to me like a lot of your coaching staff is still, I'm not going to say competing, but they still wrestle with the team. Do you and Casey and Kale still get on the mat every week and actually roll live or play wrestle with these guys?
Yeah, to one extent or the other, we're all on the mat. I'm actually probably a little bit less than the other two. I don't know what it is. Maybe they're just tougher than me, or maybe I've aged faster. I'm not sure. But, we were on the mat. We're very active. Cunningham he still takes guys down and beats on them. And Kel, when he kind of loosens up a little bit and shakes it out, he's still incredible. Some of the stuff he's able to do is mind-boggling. He doesn't shoot as much as he once did, but he warms up enough to hit some shots. I don't know if there's anybody that can stop him.
Still to this day?
Yeah, still to this day. His technique and the things that he's done and his hits and his mat presence, pretty darn incredible. And whether it's freestyle or folk style, when Casey Cunningham first got to Iowa State, he was wrestling with Kale. And he told me afterwards, he said, I had no idea how good he was. And he said, and here's the thing about it, too. He said, people just think of him as a feet wrestler. He said, I think he might be better on the mat than he is on his feet. Just
really?
Something that I never saw. He said, it's just his hits and his mat presence. He told me, he said, I think he might be the best folk-style mat wrestler that I've ever wrestled with. And, so,
Jesus, that's crazy.
So our guys are lucky. Kel's a tough guy. He'll go wrestle 4 or 5 matches in a day. It doesn't matter how beat up he is or how bad his neck hurts. And our guys are pretty darn fortunate to have somebody that skilled that's still willing to get out there and do that with them.
Yeah, for sure. And this was obviously several years ago, so you guys we were all younger. But like I said, when you guys came in, I remember watching and you were doing more of, I guess, what people think of as the traditional coaching role, like walking around and helping the guys and talking to them and getting their minds right. And I watched Kale just wrestle with Varner and 2 or 3 of the other guys, and just if you didn't know he was one of the coaches or the coach, you wouldn't have known. He just put his stuff on and started rolling around with guys like everybody else. I had somebody tell me that to ask you, how, I know he's an Olympic gold medalist. I know he's 159 or whatever it was in but can you kind of help quantify just how good he was as a competitor for a guy that was, there with the journey the whole time? And, as an older brother, as, a mentor to him, how good was, I don't want to say was he, because it's not like he's good now, but as a competitor, how good was he?
Well, we look for recruits. You look for somebody that has, all the aspects, everything that you would need: strength, speed, mental toughness, whatever it might be. But he's one of those guys that is close to anybody that had it all. But to watch him go through it was pretty incredible as well. To win every single college match,
yeah,
it's not possible, right? It's not possible, but he did it. He somehow did it, and the technique, he got to where he was just better than those guys. But the mental aspect of it, to think about that every day, every match, every season, every year, that wore on him. I know that going through his freshman or sophomore year, it was hard, but when he started getting into his junior year, that's when it really got tough. It really got tough, but he found a way to do it. He found a way to win that junior and senior year, and then didn't really even have time to take a breath, and he's expected to go win worlds and Olympic championships right away. And he had I guess for a regular person, he had a tough world championships, only got the silver medal, but then figured it out. I think that he just started to figure out the game of freestyle in time for the Athens Games. And up until that point, he was more of just a modified folk style wrestler, but he just kind of started to figure it out when he got to Athens and was able to win the gold medal. And I believe that, had he continued to wrestle, you would have just have seen the beginning of where he could be. When we see him in the room after that, 05, 06, 07, 08, that's when the guy was really good. That's when, I don't think there's anybody that could have touched him out there. So, and, I'm his brother, so it's kind of weird for me to say, but I was able to watch him develop and go through it all. And, he's still out on the mat with the best guys in the world, and he can still go toe to toe with them.
Even now, you're saying?
Even now. Wow. They've been in.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're
they've been into our room, and he can go toe to toe with them.
Yeah, I would guess you guys probably have a few good people pass through that room.
Mm-hmm.
So, how has he changed? I guess maybe not changed, but I guess how is he different as a person from going from a competitor to a coach?
Well, that's a completely different. There's probably something if you really wanted to know, you'd have to ask him. But I think it's been a completely different mindset. You go from waking up every day thinking about yourself and what you needed to do or what you needed to work on, to, for us now, he's thinking of 37 guys on our college team plus a whole bunch more guys in our Nittany Lion Wrestling Club. So it's just, I wouldn't say it's an opposite approach, but it's just flipping. How do I now take what I did as an athlete and teach that to other people? And I think that takes time as well. I remember having a discussion with him when we first started coaching, and it was me, him, and Tim Hartung at the time. And he said something that effect. He said, well, we're just getting this going, but he said, I'm going to need you guys' help because I'm not really sure yet what we need to be doing, and you guys both have more coaching experience than I do. So I'm going to try to learn from you guys as we go. So maybe that willingness as a young coach to know that there was more out there to learn helped him get to that point even faster.
Yeah, and that's a pretty cool attitude, because when people are at the top of the game, a lot of people have a lot of arrogance, and usually with arrogance comes the lack of willingness to learn, because, to say I want to learn is you have to sort of humble yourself a little bit to the person you're learning from. So that's pretty impressive. You mentioned Nittany Lion Wrestling Club and the RTC and that kind of stuff. So, tell me a little bit about how that works. Maybe almost logistically, do those guys, what are the rules? Are they allowed to train with your team? Do they have to train on separate hours? Who all's out there right now? Tell me a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club exists completely separate from Penn State University and the Penn State wrestling team. With the regional training center rules, there is some overlap as far as participation as coaches. Our vision for the club has not necessarily been, let's develop the finest club in the country. I know if we do that, great, right? But the vision was to make sure that we were able to help our guys reach their goals. David Taylor comes to us and he says, I want to be an Olympic champion. we need to have a way to have that in place so that he can do that. And so that's what we've done with our club. And we're very, very fortunate to have people behind the program that are willing to support that. Our alumni in the Penn State University community, they understand the value of the club, and they've been willing to give their time and resources to help us do that. So, currently we're able to fund guys that are postgraduates to living stipends, competition fees. They need to get to Russia. They can get to Russia. We cover their health insurance. I know a lot of people, these guys are wrestling around the country and they don't have health insurance. They're trying to find out how to get it on their own. That's expensive stuff these days. And so, we're fortunate to be able to provide that for the guys. And it's just part of our overall plan to make sure that, any individual that comes into our program can reach the goals that they've set for themselves.
That's really cool. It seems like you guys are trying to take away as many of the distractions as possible and let these guys just focus on becoming the best guys in the world. So besides Taylor, who all is currently in the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club?
Well, we just last week we had to say goodbye to Frank Molinaro. He just he's been with us, but he took the coaching position down at Virginia Tech. We're all very happy for him. It was always kind of a bitter thing. Our guys grow up, eventually they have to go away and get jobs, but he'll do great there. But he's been a big part of this club the last few years. Currently have like Nico Megaludis, kind of guy going through the lineup. Jordan Conaway, Matt Brown, Taylor, Franklin Gomez, he wrestles for Puerto Rico, Brad Dombrowski and Victor Terrell, part of the Army athlete program. Nick Ladowski is usually here a week per month doing training. Right now we have in our room helping coach Tatsuhiro Yonemitsu. He's a 2012 Olympic champion from Japan. He is absolutely incredible. His skill and the things he does. I've never seen anyone else that wrestles quite like him.
What was the name you said that is incredible?
Tatsuhiro Yonemitsu. He was 66-kilo gold medalist in London from Japan. He's been with us the last almost 2 years. Pound for pound in 2012, one of the best in the world, one of the best that I've ever seen, and just even on him, he's incredible. So he's been a big part of helping Franklin Gomez have his international success and Frank Molinaro get to the Olympics. Eric Thompson, he trained with us before. He's coming back. He's going to be helping doing some heavyweight coaching for us. So it's kind of it's not always the same people, but it's a busy room. A lot of people coming in. We have guys, maybe a couple more that'll be moving out here this summer to train. So it's quite a roster, and it continues to grow. Hopefully in the future we have some of these guys that are Penn State athletes now that'll be wrestling in it as well.
Yeah. So, it sounds like you guys obviously got a first-class, like you said, roster and the number of people that are there. And it's not like you just have good middleweights or upper weights or lower weights. You got studs up and down the line. So I was actually standing next to Varner during the Rutherford Jordan Oliver match. And, I think that match, along with the Dake Burroughs final, was kind of the two matches that everybody focused on in terms of the new freestyle rules. I'm going to kind of just tell you what I think for whatever that's worth, and then kind of ask you what you think. I think it's kind of crazy that a subjective ruling on how many times you hit a guy in the head or touch him in the head is when that call is made is literally worth more than a takedown. I'm very interested to hear your guys' opinions on what you think about the new freestyle rules.
Well, I'd have to, obviously we were, you mentioned the match with Zane and Oliver, and so, I don't really want to talk about that situation because, that happened and that's where they called it and fine, it's over, that's the thing with, it's over. Here's the hard part with freestyle wrestling is that, they never go to an event like that without coming away feeling like someone got not necessarily cheated, because I don't want to say that, but that it didn't feel right. And the rules are, there's a lot of subjectivity in them to me. And there was some discussion, I believe, after this national tournament, like they're saying, all right, do the new freestyle rules work? And people are arguing back and forth whether or not they work. And my point is they don't work because they can't be called consistent. They can and they won't, and if there's a call that can't be called consistently, then to me it's not working. And the point that you said too as well, it being worth more than a takedown, that's an example I've used many times, that you have somebody go and get a takedown. We want to encourage action. You want to incentivize that action. We want guys to take risk and score.
Right.
But then you have another situation where maybe somebody grabs someone's fingers, caution too. Like, wait, okay, maybe the fingers should be awarded, but I don't see that should be more powerful than somebody going and getting a takedown. No. So that's the other part of it too. Maybe a hand to the head should be penalized, but I don't think it should be penalized to a degree because it's back and forth. Each guy's putting their hands on someone's head, finger grabbing. Well, who's grabbing the fingers? I don't know. In the Molinaro-Kennedy match, they hit Frank with the caution 2 against him for grabbing the fingers. 30 seconds later, they both grab each other's fingers again, and it's caution 2 for the other guy. And I'm not saying that those referees did it wrong. I'm just saying that rule is really hard to call consistently.
Yeah.
And if you can't call it consistently, then you have problems.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I think that it's very well said, that look, it's not that you're on one side of this argument or the other. It's like you're saying, if you can't say, look, if you touch the guy in the head 6 times, it's not a point, and the 7th time it's a point, something like that, then it lends itself to what happened. Like, I literally saw the referee like standing outside the bathroom, and I said, what do you think about these new correct throw rules? He goes, I think it's a dumb rule, but we have to interpret it, and I think it was interpreted correctly in that situation. And, I'm sure you obviously look at it differently because it was your guy, but I mean, it's just
no. I talked to Zane. We watched the tape afterwards, and I said, Zane, I think they called it right based on the rules. I think they did. I don't like the rule. I don't like the rule, no matter who it is. I think somebody throws themselves to their back to score because they're losing, but doesn't score, but then gets points. I don't really think the situation is, I don't really think that should be how something's scored. By the rule, though, I think they called it right. But I never was really a fan of a correct throw. A correct throw to me is one that works.
Yeah, we've had that discussion on air too. Like maybe it's points for an incorrect throw.
And maybe and as well too, maybe it should just be a point. I mean, 2 points for not executing the technique correctly. And I understand, they want to incentivize, they want people to take risk, but trying to throw somebody when you're losing, that's not taking risk. And that's not a risk. You have to.
Yeah, there's no lose situation, so you might as well do it.
Yeah,
right?
There's a no lose situation. So that's just kind of generally philosophy speaking. I don't like it. I would rather those things just be a point. I'd rather them not even be a caution. But I have no influence in these decisions. It's just, it's kind of my observation. I think one of the best moves they made ever, I always thought it was crazy. You could shoot it on a single leg, get dumped and come around behind, and that guy gets 2, you get 1. Well, where's the incentive?
Right.
If you want people to go grab a leg, there needs to be an incentive for grabbing the guy's leg. So when they made the takedown 2 points, I thought that was a huge step in the right direction. And that's the way I think we need to think. What's going to get someone to actually score consistently over and over?
Yeah. I mean, you got to, like you're saying, you want the rules to reward aggression and taking chances. And I think it's a very good point that you make that, if you're beating me by however many at the end, I'm not taking a risk by trying something. It would actually be taking a risk to not try something. I'd be guaranteeing I'm going to lose. So,
exactly.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on the new proposed collegiate rules, like the scrambling rules and some of the headgear, facial hair, all that kind of stuff? Where do you stand? Like, which one of those would you like to see passed and not, and why?
Well, rule changes are always a little bit tricky because I really think you don't just jump into it. I mean, you got to take your time, think about them, because there's what we think is going to happen, and then there's what actually happens, and they're not always the same thing. I think there's interesting ideas. I mean, I have the list here of some of them. The rules for the weight loss, the penalties, I think that's fine. The weight allowance for another point for the second day of competition. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's fine. Ear protection, I know as an athlete I wouldn't have wanted to wear them. But I know that I had conceded that I was going to have cauliflower ear. It didn't bother me at all. And I think that if you go into the summertime and you see guys, if someone's working out somewhere, chances are they're not going to be wearing headgear. Some guys do, but I think most of them don't. So, what's the difference if they wear them in the competition? So I think it's fine. I think they're silly looking a little bit if you're talking about perception of the sport. Right, if you want to see what people think of the sport, they draw a cartoon of wrestlers. They're always in a goofy-looking singlet with big goofy headgear. So I don't know if that should play into the decision, but that's part of it. Facial hair, yes, I like the idea of having short facial hair. I always felt like it was kind of protection against microorganisms. Making a guy get up and shave at 6 a.m, close shave before they get on a scale, and then go wrestle. I always felt like it was kind of opening their skin up to, potential whatever might get there.
Whatever fungus.
I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. But I do know that razor burn going out onto a mat is not, that's not a recipe for good things to happen.
For sure.
We've actually had guys. They were saying to me last year they wanted us to try to propose that as a staff. I said, well, I don't know if that's how it works. I don't think our staff makes it.
You guys aren't running that, Coach?
No. They have the third-party video review, and I think that's okay. I don't know. I mean, get to the national tournament. I don't have a problem with the referee that's on the mat going over and watching his own video and deciding whether or not to change it. I think that, a lot of coaches feel like it should be someone else. I really don't have a problem with it. Our experience with those guys is that they're wanting to do the best they possibly can. Now, whether we agree with their call or not, that's our job as coaches, to not to agree with their calls. But I think they do a pretty darn good job of going over and watching the videos. But, maybe we need to change, maybe we don't. I don't really have a strong opinion either way. And then I guess the big one you asked about is the scrambling.
Yeah.
Whether if you're on your back for 90 degrees, is it going to be recount and then it's a takedown? You know what? I don't know. I'm back and forth on it.
Really?
I don't like the idea that you can lay on your back for an extended period of time and nothing happen. But, folk style wrestling, there's an element of scrambling and dragging a guy out and having to secure a takedown. It's not freestyle wrestling. It's different. It's a different set of rules. So that's part of the sport, that scramble. So I think you just have to be careful taking some things away. And, I don't know, maybe it would go in and be a great change. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we as coaches need to do a better job of teaching guys how to beat the scramble, teaching our guys to out of the positions, teaching them to keep their feet free so they're not rolling around on their backs. I don't know, is it a coaching thing? Is it a refereeing thing? I'm not sure. But I could convince myself either way in the same conversation that it should be one way or the other. I don't know if that helps you or not.
No, it does. I mean, anytime somebody's at the top of the game, their insights, their opinions, those are really, really interesting for people to hear. Everything you said was interesting, but what really jumped off to me was that you're fine with referees reviewing their own calls, and that on the scramble rule, for whatever you want to call that rule, that you see value to both sides of it. And, I think that's a very balanced, measured, reasonable way to look at it. I do think that if you're marketing the sport, that guys not wearing headgears and, if you're looking for iconic photos and, people, faces of the sport, the headgears don't do anything to help that. So, I didn't, when I read that people wear the headgears the wrong way and that can actually promote cauliflower, I thought that was kind of insane myself. But, I think if you wrestle for a long time, you just figure your ears are going to get beat up, and that's just part of the process. So, yeah. So one of the things that I think is interesting is your guys really seem fresh at the end of the year when it counts? You know, that, I mean, like, yeah, obviously you guys didn't win the Big Tens this year, and then, you know, you won the nationals, and you had, you know, multiple guys that didn't win the Big Ten titles individually win national titles. So how do you guys, I mean, every coach in the country and every kid in the country is like, I'm going to peak at the right time, but clearly you guys have done a great job of doing that. How do you, and I'm not asking you for a specific formula because, one, I don't know if there is one, and two, I guarantee if there is, you wouldn't tell me, but you know, it's the exact recipe to do that. So, but, you know, how do you guys as a staff kind of know when to get on them a little bit, when to, you know, really push them, and then kind of when to ease or back off?
Well, this kind of comes back, I think, to maybe one of the first or second questions you were asking is about the art of coaching. And, you know, we as coaches, we've spent a lot of time getting guys ready to go, and we pay close attention. You know, I watch how the guy walks into the room. I watch how he sits when he's listening to practice. I watch how he warms up. I need to get as much information as I possibly can so that I know what that guy needs to do to be ready to compete at his best. And we all do that as a staff. We talk about it. We meet about it every day before we go to practice. Sometimes we talk about what we're going to talk about at the meeting before practice. And so I don't know if there's a magic formula, because we have some guys that we do things differently with. And, you know, I think that it's just a matter of coaches paying close attention to what they're doing with their athletes and adjusting. You know, I take notes on what we do. I mean, I have 7 years of practice plans, and I look at them, and we look at them, we talk about them, and say, wait a minute here. What did we do wrong? What did we do right? How can we change it? You know, what needs to be different? And then just a willingness to learn. And I think that there's always a better way to do something out there. You know, there's always somebody that knows more, and you know, so we're actively engaged in trying to learn more about the body, learn more about peaking, trying to find more about the science of the sport that will help us with the art of coaching. I can't give you a formula for what we do. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, if you want to ask me what we do to have guys ready, I would tell you to tell other coaches that we run 10 miles a day going up into the national tournament, right?
9 live matches on Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're a smart guy. So I hope the question was reasonable in what I meant. So I think you said a couple things, though. Like you said, you know, you look at how a guy sits, and you look at how a guy walks into the room. And so I'm guessing what I'm taking away from that is, you know, I'm going to just use me and Cunningham as an example. Like I walk in and maybe, you know, I'm real high energy and everything's good, and I finally got that girl to go out with me, and I got an A on the midterm and everything else. And then Casey walks in, and, you know, his head's down, or he's kind of dragging. That, you know, maybe it's a good day to push me a little bit harder because I've got the energy, and maybe it's a better day to taper him down and kind of work with him on the mental side or some other side of things. And that's really, at least if I'm understanding it right, that's really you coaching to the athlete specifically and to their specific situation. Is that a correct interpretation of what you were saying?
Yeah, I would say so. That's pretty correct. I mean, there's some consistency, I think, between athletes. There's the general ideas we found that works, but, you know, everybody's different. You know, if you're a coach, you need to know your athlete. You know, if you don't know your athletes, you're going to have a hard time preparing them.
Yeah, for sure. You know, one of the things that, and I've talked to coaches and they have very different philosophies on this, or else they're just kind of, you know, not telling me the whole truth, but how much time goes into game planning for specific matches and opponents, you know, especially when you have so many guys that went deep in the tournament, you know, specifically, you know, you guys went 5 for 5, obviously, in the finals and reversed a couple matches, you know, a kid like Joseph that lost to Aymar multiple times. You know, how much is it like you're going to sit down with Joseph and Casey's going to sit down with Hall and Kale's going to sit down with Zane or Nolf, and I'm just, you know, matching people up hypothetically. What does or doesn't go into that stuff for you guys?
Well, that's it's kind of a tricky thing because you know, you're really looking at the mental aspect of an athlete, and you know, all of them coming in are a lot of different. We have some guys that have watched a lot of video and prep. We have some guys that have never watched video, and every guy's a little bit different. You know, sometimes we see something and we think we need to change, but again, as a coaching staff, we work together and make sure that, we're approaching the athlete right between the Big Ten and the national tournament, what they need to work on. Also realizing that, whoever we're coaching has probably been wrestling 15 years. So they have a pretty good idea of how to wrestle anyway, kind of maybe making small adjustments. And mat prep, I mean, if you start match prepping 3 days before the national tournament, it's about a year too late. When we're looking at next season, and maybe we're potentially thinking about who Zane Rutherford might wrestle in national finals next year, well, I better start that prep now. What does he need to do to get better to beat those guys now? And you work on it. Day to day, week to week, within the season, everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's interesting that that your perspective is to start that far ahead of time, because I do the national rankings for track, and I did the interviews and was on the floor, and I'm just down there with a buddy of mine, and like all those people, you kind of like to guess about how you think the finals are going to go. And I told a buddy of mine for years, because Mays, grew up right around here in St. Louis, and I'm like, it's really hard to prepare for that guy's double leg until it hits you one time. And I said, I really think he's going to get at least one takedown in the finals. And obviously that's what happened. And then, Zane adjusted, and that was kind of the end of that. So, but it's super interesting that, you're looking at, okay, hey, Cody might wrestle David a year from now. I need to be working on that now instead of, waiting till the end. And when I coach for a long time, you're right. Some guys want to watch tape, and some guys are like, look, I'm going to do me, and, we'll let that other guy worry about him. So, like you're saying, it's important to know your kids. I mean, that's, I think, the overriding message I've gotten from you is that you have to know your guys, and you have to be coachable and willing to adjust. So, I always like to ask the guys to take the time to do the interview, because we have a lot of kids listening to this, and I know your guys' recruiting classes have really struggled here, Coach. So I'll do what I can to help. But obviously you got, pretty much everybody wants to come wrestle for Penn State right now. But what are you guys looking for when it comes to recruiting people to Penn State?
Well, there's a whole different bunch of things you look for, I guess. We watch our guys compete. We try to watch them practice. If we see somebody lose, sometimes that's even more valuable than when they win. You learn a lot about somebody in their loss. I saw Jason Nolf lose a match to a kid and then turn around and beat him in the state tournament, and saw the adjustments that he made and the approach that he took coming back. I remember, I already thought he was the guy that we wanted to get. And then for me, like, well, there's no question now. Jason Nolf is going to be something special. So I think it's getting out and watching and learning, and finding people that you're excited to coach. If you're recruiting someone, you're thinking, man, I don't know how excited I am to coach those guys. Well, you might want to think about it.
Maybe stop recruiting them, huh?
I don't know. There's no formula for it. We do the best we can to figure out who's going to fit best in our program and with our guys and with the coaching staff. We hope we get it right.
Yeah, well, you guys have been getting it right. And there's certain programs that consistently get a lot of the blue chippers coming out of high school, but you guys have done as good a job as anybody in the country in developing them and really getting them to meet or in a lot of cases even exceed the high expectations that people had for those kids, coming out of high school. So, Coach, I can't thank you enough for your time. You've given me an hour, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to our listeners. And, I knew I probably wasn't going to get the recipe to the secret sauce, but, congratulations on everything you guys are doing up there. It's very, very impressive. And I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
All right, folks, that was Coach Sanderson, the associate head coach at Penn State University. This is David Mirikitani with Matt Chat. We'll speak to you all next week.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.